Hey everyone, welcome. It's June 4th. This is Gunita here from the 1947 Partition Archive. I've got Fahad here from our team. Say hi to Fahad. So today we're just going to discuss with you a brief timeline of the 75 Days of Partition, which began on June 3rd, which is when the Mountbatten Plan was announced, and it ended on August 17th with the Radcliffe Line, and it's 75 days in between. And we're doing this mini series of small micro episodes for you to commemorate the 75th anniversary. So I'm going to turn it over to Fahad because he's put together a really interesting slide deck for you of historical photographs.
Yeah. So what we'll be doing today is instead of going through the academic readings, what I've thought is I use newspapers, which are primary sources. So I'm going to take our audience through the newspapers and we'll see the events. Like it will be sort of like seeing the events in real time, because
Okay.
we'll be using newspapers for that instead of the academic sources. So
Okay.
I'll turn my camera off. Otherwise, once I start the presentation, because my net is a bit choppy. So
Sure. All right. So we've got your presentation on. Let's see what you got.
So we start with the June 3rd, 1947, because that's when the Mountbatten Plan was finalized. And here we have a photo of the meeting with Nehru, Patel, Kripalani, Jinnah, and Liaquat Ali Khan. And Lord Mountbatten told them his plan of transfer of power. In this, Pakistan got a truncated nation in the final and the immediate deal. And both nations were to receive dominion status. In principle, the Indian states were to accede to either India or Pakistan as they chose. The meeting was reconvened the next following day also, and in that Mountbatten gave the final assent, took the final assent of each Indian leader for the partition of India. On that evening, he also addressed the entire country through All India Radio and declared his plan for independence of India.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So there's a Sikh gentleman here. Do you remember his name in the picture, who was also there to represent the Sikh community?
I think it's
Baldev Singh, I believe. Yeah. I think that's him on the left there. Yeah. And then the second question I had was, do you know where this meeting was held?
No, that's not given in the photo.
Okay, I think it's at the Imperial Hotel. I think I've actually been to this room, and they have this photograph hanging there.
Oh, that's nice.
In Delhi. Okay, over to you. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I would like those interruptions because I also get to know a lot. Now the thing is, everyone unequivocally sort of took Jinnah as the sole person because of whom this partition happened, right? And Aisha Jalal has a very different, nuanced argument towards that, and her argument was basically that Jinnah's communal factor, or in his speeches, only started after 1937 when the Muslim League fared badly in the general elections and Congress had a huge victory. So after that, she says that but she still says that she sees him as continuing to pursue a Muslim future within India and not moving quickly to a decision that the future must be found outside, that is Pakistan. So how she looks at it is that Jinnah asked for partition for a separate country because it was too big an ask, so it would be shot down. So if you have too big an ask, then the other party will negotiate and try to reach you in the middle, and that middle for Jinnah was the separate provinces for Muslim majority areas, but within the dominion of India with separate electorates. So that's what he wanted to achieve, but unfortunately for him, his plan backfired in 1946 and then also in 1947 when the Mountbatten Plan was finally established. So what Aisha Jalal, how she sees it as, he played a poker match. He had a really weak hand. He did well with it for like 7 years, but at the end that backfired because the audience that he pandered to at that time, they wanted a separate Pakistan, and then he couldn't control that. So yeah, that was the
Thank you
familiar.
for sharing that. I think it's important to look at all the different interpretations of the past.
So here we see after the Mountbatten Plan, Amrita Bazar Patrika's next day, the full page was like Britain decrees balkanization of India.
And
The government.
what is the date on this? Sorry to interrupt again.
June 4. That's the June 4 paper, but
Okay.
it's about the June 3rd event that happened, and you can see here in the photo they are also discussing this. Sorry. And there is also a interview of Nehru the next day after that. He did not contest partition. He in fact just had a heavy very heavy on emotions, that oh, this is heartbreaking, but we still have to do that because this is the only way forward from now on. This is how all the leaders started seeing partition, that it's sort of necessary because things are so bad now, this has to happen. And on June 4, Lord Mountbatten announced the date. Earlier he had said that 1948. That's the year 1948. That's the date that Britishers set for themselves to move out of India. But June 4, he declared, "Oh no, we have to transfer power completely by August 15, and then start leaving as soon as possible." So that was the news on June 4, and then in the newspapers on June 5th. June 5th, he declared, after he was like, okay, August 15th, that's the final date we are setting ourselves. We need we need a committee that will look at the effective implementation of this plan, and that for that he had set up a parliamentary committee and a partition council, and it had members from both Congress and the Muslim League. Now the thing was, June 6th and June 7th, June 5th, 6th, 7th, all these, basically this entire week, all the Muslim leaguers, especially the ones that were in like central India, UP, and UP belt specifically, there was Hasrat Mohani, and then there was ZH Lari. They were really agonized by Jinnah because they thought that he had betrayed the Indian Muslims, in the sense uh, that he chose Pakistan over the cost of their lives, and that's how they saw Hasrat Mohani, and all of them saw that. So then here's a headline: "Down with Jinnah," said Hasrat Mohani, and for that he was reprimanded by the Muslim League, but then he was very vocal about his differences with Jinnah on partition, and he said that we won't take any separate electorates because that will fan the communal flames more. And he just said, oh, we'll rely more on the goodwill of the majority community. Then 7 June, Mahatma Gandhi just says, okay, fine. He was against partition all his life, even till the day he died. But then he agreed to the plan. He's like, oh, now the Congress has decided, we have to do it. So he also faced a lot of backlash from the populations because they were expecting him to oppose that, but he didn't. But later in August, we'll see he'll say, oh, partition is an evil thing that happened, and he'll say all that, but he never says, oh, reverse it.
Important points on what was said and what was not said.
Yeah. On June 8, we see the events of June 7. Hyderabad and Bhopal and other independent princely states, they wanted to declare the independence, while the Constituent Assembly and the Indian leaders, especially Nehru and Kriplani and all others, basically the lawyer leaders, they wanted them to join the Joint Constituent Assembly as soon as possible. But Hyderabad, Bhopal, and later we'll see other states also, they try to declare their independence, but they are not allowed to, because then Hyderabad, you see there's Operation Polo much later in 1948, even though they declared independence in 1947. June 9, Khaksars were also like, at this point, every other member of Muslim League or any other groups that Muslims had, they they were not they did not agree to Jinnah's decision of partition. And here we see they invaded the league meeting, they broke the glasses, uh, they were trying to set fire, but then the guards of the league they stopped them, but all this was happening. The violence was not only violence did not play out only in the streets, but also in these league meetings and the high profile political discussions also.
Very fascinating.
Yeah.
Fahad. I don't think most people know about this.
And on June 10, we finally see then, because they have agreed. It took them a week to completely be fine with the June 3rd decision. And now the politicians were moving towards how to actually implement it. So Indian leaders, they came up with a pattern. So it's the one that we have currently, bicameral legislature for independent India. Uh, uh, Two houses in parliament, and then it's the same as the British, the British parliament had. So they that's the one that they went with.
Hmm.
For Punjab partition, there was another committee that was set up, and it had members from in addition to Congress and Muslim League, they also had members from Akali Dal, so that the partition, so that because otherwise, then only Hindu and Muslim voices are mostly when talked about India as undivided India as whole. Only Congress and Muslim League was given precedence. But when talked about like in Bengal or in Punjab, when there was local partition that had to happen, because these areas were, they had pockets of Muslim majority, Sikh majority, Hindu majority, so they had to take into account Sikh voices also, which did not happen at the level that it was supposed to happen at the national scale. But in Punjab, Akali voices were definitely heard. June 14, we see Gandhiji's advices. Gandhiji also advises these princely states, okay, join the Constituent Assembly. And then we see here, if you can read if the headline is visible, Gopal Swami Iyengar's stern warning. The warning is for the princely states that the country will use force to complete the demarcating of its borders if it has to. It will completely unify the country in that sense, if even if they have to require the force, which later we see in Operation Polo and then in Goa and Northeast also. Um, on the right side of the screen, there's a news headline that says a state's declaration of independence entirely meaningless. So Mr. K.M. Munshi, he analyzed the legal position, and he said that when India was ruled by the British, the paramountcy rested with the British. Now that Britishers are leaving, the inheritance of the paramountcy would be by the newborn Indian state. So instead of, so they are more talking about the inheritance of the paramountcy, and in that sense they are saying, oh, only the protection of the population in these princely states, that lies with the newly formed Indian state that would come, that would be formed on August 15. So these are the legal positions that they use to sort of force these princely states to come into the union. June 16, of course, then of June, July, and August, all throughout, there are like events of violence and violence. Here we see in Kanpur, which is Kanpur now, 24-hour curfew imposed because the unruly mob killed 5 people and so many were injured. And on the same day, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru also says that his heart has been broken because there's so much violence that broke out, and the violence did not broke out in only in pockets. It broke out throughout the undivided India. There was violence in Lahore. There was violence in what now is the Indian side of Punjab. There was violence in Sylhet. There was violence in Calcutta. It was all throughout. But Punjab and Bengal were most affected because of the partition would run through, literally run through these states, the line. And here at the bottom is an image of Pathans who took up arms along with the red shirts. Red shirts were the Khudai Khidmatgar. There was a movement in frontier, a northwestern frontier of Pakistan now. So they took arms and they vowed to protect minorities from all violence. Um, uh, June 16 also, Bengal partition was finalized. Before that, they were trying to go for a referendum, uh, whether to have it or not. But after that, they had like an open voting on the partition in Bengal Assembly, and the stage was set for Bengal's partition. Sylhet Originally they thought that they would be able to retain Sylhet on the Indian side, but then it went to Bangladesh, which now is Bangladesh. On June 17, 1947, the discussion was mostly around the armed forces, and instead of uh, instead of going for the division on communal basis, they went on the territorial basis. But then later in this slide also, we in this presentation also, we will see that they couldn't escape the communal division of armed forces either. They wanted to have it only on territorial basis, but that's not what happened later. Um while we see on the Indian leaders, they wanted the states to join very quickly to on the Indian side, the princely states. Jinnah declares the freedom for them to take action according to their own needs. And this is how we see the difference. Whatever Congress did, Jinnah was antithetical to that, and vice versa also, except in the later years when they in 19 from 1947 to 1952, when they Jinnah reigned 48, but the leadership of Pakistan and the leadership of India from 47 to 52, they cooperated on a lot of things, specifically on issues of refugees and on the issues of abducted women. Because by the time of 49, they were uh, able to send a lot of abducted women back to their homelands. June 18, we see the British Communist Party. They opposed the partition, and they sort of pleaded the leadership all of the undividing, because India is still undivided at this point. It's still 2 months away from that. They pleaded them to not not take the partition route, because this is the British imperialism, something that is imposing on them, and they should reject it at all costs. This is what the British Communist Party told.
So, Fahad, I'm going to interrupt you real quick. I think what we're going to have to do, since this is supposed to be a microburst, this is awesome, actually. I absolutely love it, because I think a lot of us do not know how this history came about, how it progressed, what was happening day to day. So it looks like we've gone through the middle of June. So if we can come back to this presentation and pick up right here in about, in about 10 days or so, in about 2 weeks, I think it'll be super helpful. And do you want to, I don't know if you can do that really quick, but do you want to sum up what you talked about really quick?
Okay, so we have seen the period between June 3rd till June 18, and during this period, we have just seen the leadership throughout India, be it the Muslim leadership only vested in Jinnah, and the Hindu leadership vested in Congress. They agreed for partition, but we also see a lot of contestation coming to them from the different leaders in Muslim League. Hazrat Mohani, for example, we went through that. They didn't want the partition to happen, and same goes for Maulana Abul Kalam Azad or Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan. And even in this slide, even in the last slide that I was showing, uh, Hindu leaders also, some of the Hindu religious leaders, they also said that the youth should take up arms and try to save their country in a way that it's not divided. So that was.
Can you turn on your camera, since I have you on without your presentation? There you go. Good to see you again. Hi. So
that was happening, and also now the division of assets was coming up. The first and foremost was the Indian Army. They wanted the division to be on territorial basis, as in what region goes with Pakistan, what region stays with India. So they wanted that, but later we will see, specifically in July, that was not possible, because the communal, if anything, we can call it also a holocaust of sorts, partition holocaust. uh, it spread so much that even the army was not uh, spared from that. And instead of the territorial basis, the army was also divided on the communal basis, and 2/3 of the army went to India, and 1/3 went to Pakistan, and that was exactly on communal lines instead of the territorial lines that they wanted. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's a really important recap, and I'm looking forward to having you back on the 75 Days of Partition, if you can make time for us and we can continue. Maybe we can do the presentation in bursts so that, as we get closer to August, we can keep in mind what's been going on. So thanks so much, Fahad, for coming today. And we'll look forward to chatting again soon. And you're speaking to us from Delhi?
Yeah, right now I'm in Delhi.
Okay. I'm speaking to everybody from California.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, have a good day. Have a good evening, and have a good day if you guys are in North America or Europe. Have a good evening if you're in South Asia. And bye, everyone. Please join us again on Monday at the same time.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.